Hi, this is Greg Maddox, and you're listening to Out of Left Field on the Grueling Truth Network.
Hey guys, welcome back to Out of Left Field. Graham and Chris here with you again. A lot of stuff to get to, man. The baseball landscape is changing. There really is no easy way to put it. We are seeing big moves happen already. If we were expecting kind of the dominoes to begin to fall later on into the year as they did, this time starting last year in the offseason, we're wrong, right? We've seen big moves from the Mariners already, and they are continuing to make those moves. The Nationals made a huge splash that I don't think either of us really thought that, even though their name was tossed around as a team interested, I didn't think they really had a legitimate shot at making it happen. And then, of course, the Red Sox and the Diamondbacks making some moves as well, which will either continue to or will change the face of those franchises as well. Let's go ahead and put the ball into play here on the show, and let's get to it right away, man. Of course, we talked last week about the end-of-season awards. Jacob deGrom wins the Cy Young. A lot of back-and-forth discussion about wins and did he deserve it, all that kind of stuff. Well, the Mets have decided to make a move to pick up a bat. That bat is Robinson Cano and also an arm in Edwin Diaz from the Seattle Mariners for Jay Bruce and some other pitchers and prospects, etc. This move blew my mind. When I called you and told you about it, at least what I was hearing, you were kind of aghast, I think is about the nicest, most family-friendly way that we can say it. My dad thought it was the stupidest move ever, which I agreed. And then we actually see that it comes through. And why in the hell the Mets, who were terrible last year, think picking up a mid-30s left-handed bat who has not been nearly the guy in Seattle as to what he thought he could be and was deserving of money-wise, and are going to pay him $100 million over the course of 5 years, and only get $20 million to offset the cost from Seattle. This is what happens when you put an agent into a GM position who has no clue what the hell he's doing.
Yeah, I think the only positive thing to come out of this trade is the acquisition of Edwin Diaz. I mean, Robinson Cano is going to be 36 when the season starts, and they're going to have him until he's 41. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't think that Robinson Cano is going to be playing probably even at the level he was playing at in the 80 games that he played last year by the time he's nearing 40. He's coming off of a season in which he spent 80 games out of the clubhouse because he was doing things he wasn't supposed to be doing. You know, you wonder why 34-year-old Robinson Cano in 2017 hit 23 home runs and bat 280 with a 791 OPS. Well, because he was doing the steroids. And then he got caught. And he sits 80 games. He comes back and he plays pretty well. But he only had 350 plate appearances. You know, can we depend on that to extrapolate out to a full 162 games, which chances are he's not going to play 162 games. He's probably going to play somewhere around 150.
I feel like Robinson Cano had been doing his best Stone Cold Steve Austin impression. Needles in asses.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But Edwin Diaz, on the other hand, is a young guy. He's only been in the league for 3 years. And this past season, he had almost 60 saves. And if you can use that in conjunction with a Jacob deGrom who pitches even nearly as well as he did this past season, that might translate into 10 or 15 more wins. And 10 and 15 more wins puts the Mets in the conversation for the National League East, believe it or not. So,
and you mentioned Diaz, and I think, I mean, again, we'll see how well he reacts to New York, but his numbers are fantastic. Played played in as I'm looking up here, played in 7 more games than he did in 2017, and gave up 3 fewer hits, gave up 11 fewer runs, gave up 8 fewer earned runs, gave up 5 fewer home runs, gave up 15 fewer walks, and struck out almost 40 more batters. So, I mean, it's one of those things where he's pitching more and still lowering the negatives and raising the positives. Yeah, okay, he had 4 losses. Okay, it happens when you're a reliever. The losses are a lot more glaring, and you kind of expect relievers a lot of times to have a sub-500 record because, it's kind of the nature of the job. If they blow a save, you get the loss. It's a lot harder to blow a save and then end up getting the win. But he also had an ERA of 1.96 in 73 games. And he finished in 65 of those games.
And in 73 innings pitched, he had 124 strikeouts. To put this into perspective, we're talking about a closer who finished 8th in the Cy Young voting and top 20 in the MVP voting.
Yeah.
So when you get a guy like that back, a young guy, 24 years old, only been in the league for 3 years, and he's under control. He's not arbitration eligible for another 2 years. So he's under your control.
Making $500,000.
Right. He's making $500,000, costs you nothing. Maybe the Robinson Cano thing makes sense, but it makes me wonder, did they take Robbie Cano so they could get Edwin Diaz? Because otherwise, the Robbie Cano acquisition makes little to no sense.
I don't – even trying to get Robinson Cano, I just don't get it. And when you and I talked about this, when the deal was actually announced, what threw me off is that Brody Van Wagenen, the GM for the Mets, has this idea that making a move like this and hamstringing your team to $20 million a year to a guy that is owed a total of $120 million, and like I said at the beginning of the show, they're going to get an offset of $20 million from Seattle. He legitimately thinks, or at least he is stating, that he believes the Mets could be competitive in 2020, even next year into 2020, and be a viable contender. With what? Because the reason Robbie Cano isn't in Seattle anymore is that you can't play a damn lick of defense. D. Gordon, they brought in because obviously didn't perform as well in Miami. He had the steroid issue. Still a really good bat. Speed never goes into a slump, right? Amazing speed. They put him in center, did okay. Robbie Cano goes on the PED suspension. He lights it up at second base, which is his primary position. And like you and I had talked about plenty of times off the air, Cano had no home because Nelson Cruz is still going to be your primary DH if you're in Seattle. But yet at 36, how in the hell do you think you're going to use Robinson Cano? He cannot be your everyday, day-to-day second baseman. And you can't hide him anywhere. So did you just pay $20 million a year for a guy who maybe you can get, 60%, maybe 75% of games started, and then have a glorified pinch hitter? Is that really what the Mets just did here?
I mean, essentially, I don't see what else they're going to do with him. We're talking about a guy who's going to have an ERA probably somewhere, a WAR probably somewhere around 3. Defensively, while he's not a liability in the same way that a guy like Nick Ahmed is a liability, or some of these other guys who come out here and their defensive WARs are negative several games. But even still, at a 1 or a 0, he adds nothing above a replacement player on defense. So 5 years and $100 million is a lot of money for a replacement level player who's really not going to play more than 2 or 3 games above replacement as a hitter.
Right.
So no, I don't see personally, I don't see the upside in Robinson Cano, not for the money that they're paying him. If I was the Mets, the only way I'm taking Robinson Cano to get Edwin Diaz is with $40 or $50 million in offset money.
And mind you, I mean, we're talking just a year removed in 2017, in 150 games played, guy had 10 errors at second base, a 983 fielding percentage at second base. I mean, that's not what you expect from a guy. Yeah, he has a 988 career fielding percentage, but still, I mean, 10 errors on the season. You know, I mean, we're looking at a guy who we were still seeing 12, 13, even in New York. I mean, he's a guy who he is not going to be, you know, I mean, surprisingly, he has been a Gold Glover. He's won 2 Gold Gloves, but he is not a guy who you're going to see year in and year out be a guy that you expect to be a defensive, you know, specimen out there. Yeah, he's not going to be a guy like Manny Machado, who however much you want to hate his attitude, the defense he shows is disgustingly good.
Right. I just good on the Mets for getting an Edwin Diaz, but
we said last week that the possibility of Noah Syndergaard getting moved, right, could be that move that kind of begins to set the tone for Brodie Van Wagenen's tenure as a GM. If Syndergaard stays and this is the move that goes ahead and sets the tone, we may see Brodie Van Wagenen have a Davey Martinez type of tenure. Might be a year and a half, and bye-bye.
Wow.
Because we'll talk about this in the coming weeks. We do our team breakdowns. If the Nationals continue to struggle as they did this year, I think Davey Martinez is fired before the All-Star break. I think they pull a Mike Matheny and he's gone.
I agree.
And again, we'll touch on that more down the line, seeing what happens with that ball club. Speaking of the Washington Nationals, they made a big splash. One of the reasons why I think that Martinez is on the hot seat, because somehow or another, Patrick Corbin from the Arizona Diamondbacks, a player that Brian Cashman made no bones about it, that he was targeting Patrick Corbin as a guy he wanted in Yankee pinstripes, signed with the Washington Nationals a 6-year contract. GM Mike Rizzo said yesterday, as the formal announcement was made, quote, "As the top free agent pitcher on the market this offseason, we targeted Patrick from the onset. He was one of the top pitchers in the National League in 2018, and at 29 years old, we believe the best is yet to come. We are thrilled to bring him into our organization," close quote. $10 million of salary will be deferred. So, you know, I mean, this is going to be a $140 million guaranteed deal over 6 years, very similar to the J.D. Martinez deal we saw last year. Granted, a hitter instead of a pitcher, but man, that becomes a scary, scary lineup where you have Scherzer, you have Strasburg if he's healthy, you've got Corbin, you've got Tanner Roark if he's healthy. The question now is, has Strasburg all of a sudden found himself as a number 3? And I think he might be.
I agree. I don't really know that Strasburg, the way he struggled last year, and of course, we have to take struggle into perspective because struggle is a relative term. But the way Strasburg struggled in comparison to the Strasburg of old that we've seen, and the way that Patrick Corbin played last year, finishing 5th in the Cy Young voting, whereas Strasburg didn't even get a nod in the Cy Young voting. I feel like maybe Steven Strasburg has found himself in a position where he is the number 3 guy. Because I think Patrick Corbin is a number 2, possibly even a number 1 in some places.
I think he is set up to become the number 1 if Scherzer doesn't resign or begins to slowly, as age begins to find him, assuming that it does during the 6-year tenure of Patrick Corbin, then I think Corbin is set to go ahead and slide up.
Right.
But, I mean, Strasburg is still owed $138.3 million, $45 million due in 2023. So
Right, and he only played 22 games last season. He only started 22 games, only pitched 130 innings. So that's the kind of thing you worry about. Are the injuries going to be something that we have to overcome regularly now? Or is this 3.75 ERA or 3.74 ERA something that we're going to see from Steven Strasburg regularly now, 10 years into his career?
The health management that he requires, I think, number one, is well beyond a guy like Davey Martinez. It's why I would have loved to see a guy like Mike Maddox be there, or a veteran pitching coach, be there who really can understand these guys. But it has to make you wonder. Of course, we talked about this, not in 2017, the beginning of, I think it was the DS in 2017, where Strasburg didn't seem to not want to take the ball, right? And it makes you wonder, at this point, what is his mentality? I just think we're at that point where things for him have changed. He's a 94 and 52 pitcher, still not a bad percentage at 6.44, and a 3.14 ERA isn't bad, but that ERA could bloat if he continues to have years where he doesn't play much, and when he does play, that ERA hits 4 or begins to climb. So he's really, I think, at a point where he has to come to a reckoning, right? He has to figure out, what is he, what can he do, what can the Nationals get out of him, either as a player or as a trade commodity. And I really think if they struggle this year, he might be a guy who you got to try and make him healthy, hope he has a good year, and maybe try and move on from all the money that they owe him, because I don't think he's going to be a long-term answer for this ball club here all the way into 2023.
Right.
Another guy who is not going to be the answer, it seems, for the Washington Nationals is Bryce Harper, the young right fielder, obviously one of the biggest names, if not the biggest name, in the offseason this year. A 25-year-old finally has pretty much told the Nationals, you can go ahead and stick it, right? Finally, Grant Paulsen and Danny Rehoor of 106.7 The Fan had an interview with Nationals managing principal owner Mark Lerner. And Lerner said to this, quote, "Well, when we met with him and we gave them the offer, we told them this is the best we can do. We went right to the finish line very quickly, and we said, if this is of interest to you, please come back to us, and we'll see whether we can finish it up. But we just couldn't afford to put more than that in and still be able to put a team together that had a chance to win the NL East and go farther than that," close quote. The report is to be they offered him a $300 million 10-year deal, and that even with that money, and I know, Chris, you had some extra insight into the deal as far as opt-out and that kind of thing, even with a decade-long deal at $30 million a year for basic math, it appears that Harper is going to tell the Nationals to go ahead and pound sand.
Yeah, which, in my opinion, he is massively overestimating his free agent value. I don't see it. The only thing that the guy does at a clip above replacement, in my opinion, is get on base and hit the long ball. Yes, he hits 30 home runs a year. Yes, he has an OBP around 400. Those are high numbers. But the guy's a 270 hitter. The guy strikes out 180 times a season. His strikeout to walk ratio is horrendous. In my opinion, he has no plate discipline. He's just not the kind of guy that I trust to be in that 3-4 slot. And definitely I can look at that as that's going to come out with an RBI. He turned down this deal of 10 years at about $30 million a year with, get this, no opt-outs. None. He's going to be 26 as this season begins, and he will be 36 years old making $30 million a year. And if he's having a 249 season in 160 games this year, what's he going to be doing at 36?
And I guess the irony here is I mean, even as Lerner continued in the interviews, it also said, quote, "I really don't expect him to come back at this point. I think they've decided to move on. There's just too much money out there that he'd be leaving on the table. That's just not Mr. Boris's MO to leave money on the table," close quote. Scott Boras, of course, being the high-profile agent of Bryce Harper. And Lerner went on to say, "It's the opportunity of a lifetime for Bryce and Kayla and their family. We have no hard feelings about it." And he still thinks that the outfield will be young, pretty incredible defensively, and certainly with the bat, but it's going to be special. I think the piece here is saying that there's just too much money out there to leave money on the table. Could sound like other teams may actually be willing to go beyond that $300 million plateau. Now, granted, it is not the $500 million that we all thought that Harper would garner when he first burst onto the scene. And, of course, we saw the MVP year. But you and I have gone on record saying this quite a bit. And I think if we asked any of our guys like Adnan Virk, Dan Plesac, Mark DeRosa, John Smoltz, any of those guys that we've talked to over the course of the show, I think we're at the point now, like you and I have said, that Bryce Harper just is who he is. And if he gets hot and you find something great, it's awesome. But you have to know what you're getting into. And at this point, you're going to spend $300 million plus on a guy who there's no guarantee that he's going to hit any better than 1 for 4 every night.
Right. And I agree. And the one thing that you can look at Bryce Harper and say that he is going to do is he's going to get on base. And that's important. It really is. But is a guy who gets on base at a 400 clip even, but can't put the ball in play at better than a 250 clip, is this really a guy that's worth spending $300 or $400 million on? I don't think so. You're not talking about a guy who's ever going to be in danger of hitting 60 home runs, a la Stanton, right? And I think you and I can both look at Stanton and his ability to swing and miss, which Bryce Harper largely shares, and say that even Stanton's not worth the $320 million that he is owed.
Right.
So is Bryce Harper going to get paid? Yeah, Bryce Harper's going to get paid. Is Bryce Harper going to be the kind of guy who you can take a step back 5 or 6 years down the road, look at his contract and say, yeah, he's earning every penny of this? I don't think so. But let's spitball here. Let's assume he's not coming back to the Nationals. So then where's he going? Who can afford him?
Well, I'm curious if he wants to go west, just because obviously he grew up in Las Vegas. I think his family is still out there. Seems to be really close to his dad. Obviously, his dad has thrown him BP twice, or has thrown him twice during his home run derbies. So, it makes you wonder if he wants to go west. I've been on record saying multiple times with you and other folks, either way, I don't think being in a large market is good for him because of the personality and temperament that he has. I don't think that he would function well in a high-pressure big market like in New York, even like in L.A. And L.A. is sometimes a little more fast-paced and maybe more laid back. I definitely don't see him in New York or a Boston. Of course, Boston wouldn't sign it anyway. But
think about this. There's a report that came out a couple of days ago in Los Angeles that said that Yasiel Puig had been making some waves about the way he's been used by the Dodgers, his playing time. He's not happy. And the report says that Yasiel Puig is now on the trading block. Whether that's Puig's request or the team has decided to part ways with him and they want to see what they can get back for him, they're shopping him.
Well, when you extend Dave Roberts, and of Roberts, I think, overall disdain for the way that Puig handles himself as a professional ball player, I think that the Dodgers have made their choice. If they had to choose between Roberts or Puig, they've made their choice in their skipper.
Right. Well, especially since they've decided to hang on to him.
Right.
But that leaves a hole in right field, and last time I checked, that's where Bryce Harper plays.
I just don't know. I don't know if that ball club can afford Kershaw, Justin Turner, Manny Machado, and Bryce Harper. I get that they are not about money, but come on now.
Right. They are willing to pay, and they have for the last few years. They're willing to have the highest payroll in baseball. They're willing to pay the almost 50% luxury tax max that they've reached, and I mean 30 more million a year. I mean, I feel like winning a World Series is worth it to Magic Johnson.
I'm sure it is. I don't think, the
revenue from a World Series pays him back, I think, almost immediately.
Probably. I mean, it'd be interesting to see, where he would be as far as. I mean, obviously, he's still.
I'll say this though, if Bryce Harper does get signed by the Los Angeles Dodgers, Manny Machado does not.
Right.
You can't have them. You can't get them both. There's no one can afford that.
Right.
That's $70 million. That's probably $70 million a year they're going to have to pay those guys.
But wouldn't you rather have Machado over Harper? I would. He's a better hitter. He's a better fielder. He's not a better baseball player they hustle out of the box the same amount when they want to.
He's not a better sportsman. But neither of them are good sportsmen.
Right.
So, yes, I would rather have Manny Machado than Bryce Harper.
And that seems to be where the Dodgers really are focused is on him. Honestly, with Harper, I don't know. Because is it going to be a team like the Padres who just throw a chuck of money at him because they want to make a splash? And they want to have someone there because I don't think that makes a ton of sense for him. And if he wants to win, I think staying in Washington was still probably the better bet because you still have a really young team in Philadelphia. You have a really young team, in Atlanta who is growing. And you know what? Maybe Philadelphia is a place he would want to go. Just keeps him on the West Coast, still in the same division where he's pretty. He knows that division, and they're obviously looking to add pieces. Gene Segura, another piece from the Mariners that is rumored to be heavily courted and sought after by Philadelphia. But again, we know how fervent of a fan base they are. Let me say it as nicely as I can. I mean, they booed Santa Claus, for God's sake, right? I mean, but, in all seriousness, I don't know, again, if Bryce Harper would handle the Philadelphia type of fan. I just don't see how when he struggles and we already see how much struggling affects him mentally, how that coupled with the fan base turning on him in a heartbeat and then embracing him when he's good again, then turning on him, I don't see him being an effective player who would even enjoy the game at that point.
So let me ask you, do you think Bryce Harper would be willing to play left field?
No, he's not going to replace me as the co-host of the show.
Thank God, I don't think I could stomach him.
Hey, that's the beauty of 2,000 miles, right?
Do you think he'd be willing though to shift over to left field if the money was there?
Depends where he's going, and the only spot I could think of that you might be hinting at is a place that would make you probably shiver in cold, dark places that you don't want to talk about, kind of like the places that Colonel Jessup discussed and A Few Good Men would be the San Francisco Giants.
No, oh God, no. If the Giants sign Bryce Harper, I take all of my Giants gear off the walls.
Even
I'm going to go get this jersey. Oh no, not Posey's jersey. Now, that's not strictly Giants gear. That's definitely Posey memorabilia. I'm going to be upset if the Giants make a move for Bryce Harper. The Giants need to rebuild. I know that. You know that. Madison Bumgarner needs to get traded.
So then where are you referring to? What left field?
If he's not willing to move over and play left field, do you think Aaron Judge might be?
Well, even if Judge is, what do you do with Stanton?
Stanton's the designated hitter. You just leave him as a DH. Stanton is not the number one on the depth chart at any outfield position right now. You got Hicks in center, you got Gardner in left, and you got Judge in right.
I think the problem is that they still owe so much money, and I remember they re-signed Gardner. They still owe Ellsbury a bunch of money. Would Judge at his age? I'm sure he'd go for it. He's going to get paid too. I just don't. I think it would be. I know Dad. Dad would love for the Yankees to sign him because they would probably waste the money because of the way that his temperament would handle New York. I don't think it actually would be a solid fit. But we know the kind of moves that the Steinbrenner family wants to make. We know that Cashman, wants to see this team back in.
Well, and we know that
serious contention, and that could help.
And we know that Bryce Harper loves the New York Yankees. He's obsessed with the New York Yankees.
Right.
He's obsessed with Mickey Mantle. The guy at a Mickey Mantle themed wedding, for God's sake. So I think that if anybody's willing to throw the money at him, the one that he looks at, even if it's less time and money than the Nationals offered him, I think that if that offer, a similar offer to the one the Nationals offered him, comes from the New York Yankees, that he'll take it. Do I think it's a good move for the Yankees? No, I don't.
Honestly, I don't. I really can't disagree because I think he is. And I'm not trying to name call here at this point, but I think he is that young punk kid who thinks that, he is at the pinnacle, and the pinnacle is pinstripes in New York.
Right.
And if he gets a chance to go, he will. And, we can say as much as we want about what we think would happen. It's his call. It's his choice. If his wife wants to be there, whatever it is, that's what they have to do. So, I still think at some point that, it may end up being the actual landing spot for him.
Which has got to make you worry about the face of the American League East at that point.
I think, it stays the way that it was this year. The Rays caught lightning in a bottle. I don't think any of us expect it to happen again. And that's no shade to Kevin Cash, but do we expect, Snell to be another 20-game winner? And, again, sometimes playing in a division like that where you have two guys just beating the hell out of each other makes it really good if you have a third team who is still pretty decent and they can find their way into having a really respectable record. But It's still going to be, just a slugfest by these two teams all the way through. The important thing here is that the Red Sox are still doing what they have to do to go ahead and kind of sand off the edges. They're not resting on the laurels right now of this World Championship. They're already making moves to try and go ahead and either keep pieces that were there that helped them last year or go out and find pieces to go ahead and add to be successful. In this case, Nathan Eovaldi re-signed by the Red Sox to a $68 million 4-year deal. Dave Dombrowski, president of baseball operations from the Red Sox, said, quote, "We're very happy to have Nathan back with us. He did a tremendous job for us last season, playing a significant role in helping us win the division and the World Series. His performance in the postseason was outstanding, both as a starting pitcher and as a reliever," close quote. This is great on Eovaldi, right? Had a chance to come back. A guy that came through the Rays organization. The Rays went ahead, moved him off last year to Boston, to an AL East rival. Didn't have the worst year in the world. Went 6-7. Granted, went sub 500 in Tampa. Went even 3-3 in Boston, but a 3.33 ERA. Had an ERA about 0.3 lower than his career average, which is 4.16. One of the better years that we've seen from him. And this is a guy who has a lot of really good stuff, some powerful, powerful pitches, a lot of gas behind that fastball, a lot of movement on his breaking stuff. If he pitches at least somewhat about what he did this year, a 500, maybe just above 500 clip for the Red Sox, and you can work him behind a Chris Sale, hopefully a healthy and consistent and strong David Price, then you set yourself up where Eovaldi could be a really successful and healthy number 3 for the Red Sox to kind of get them into the 4 and 5, figure out who they're going to work there, be it a Rick Porcello, maybe even Porcello at 3 and Eovaldi at 4. There's a possibility here of a really good 1 through 4 piece for this Red Sox team before we even get into 2019.
Right. You know who doesn't have a whole lot of movement or a whole lot of heat on their fastball?
Who dat?
Luke Weaver.
No.
So this is the part of the show where we get to the what trade I think of the season. Now, don't get me wrong, Robbie Cano is a head scratcher. But if I asked you what blockbuster player was going to get traded first this season, what would your answer have been?
Traded? Yeesh. Not Paul Goldschmidt. Although you and I both thought it would be a necessary move.
Yes, we did. And I think it is. I just don't think that they got back what they needed to get back for him.
No.
When you get back a guy like Luke Weaver, who went 7-11, went through in 30 games, he threw 136 innings, which means he wasn't going very deep into those games, and had a 4.95 ERA. That's not the guy you want pitching anywhere near the same rotation as Zach Greinke, because Zach Greinke's not good either. Greinke's the guy that I think
is better in a market that is better in a smaller market where he has, I think, somebody he can kind of work behind.
Right. And also, he's also the guy who needed to go. He's the guy eating up all of their payroll. So I think Zach Greinke's the guy that should have been traded.
And I still think he might be. But I think that as we look at this, when you're a team like the Mets who are, trading a pretty good chunk of prospects, for what was it? For Cano and whatnot. I don't know. It's just it's one of those things where I if you're going to trade a guy like Goldschmidt, and even I was surprised enough that it was the Cardinals that went ahead and made the move. I would have expected at least something, better back. And that really kind of caught me, it kind of caught me off just a little bit.
Well, they got back this kid named Andy Young, who is he's a prospect, obviously, a minor league prospect, and he plays pretty well, apparently. Guy hit 300 in the Arizona Fall League. He's had batting averages, in the high 200s in both single and double A. He, in fact, hit 319 in his stint at AAA in Springfield just last season. So that's a good prospect. But I think you need 3 or 4 guys of that caliber back at least for a Paul Goldschmidt. I don't think that you settle for one top prospect or one high-rated prospect and a guy who's going to be at best a backup catcher and a guy who's at best going to be a number 4 or 5 in your rotation.
Yeah, it's just one of those, even though Goldie started off a little bit slow, it just didn't make sense with what the small haul was that they got back for him. And if you're looking to rebuild, you didn't get enough pieces to rebuild, And if you're trying to move certain pieces to get other small ones to fill holes, you didn't do that either. So it was a move that seemed like it really fell flat for for the Diamondbacks, unless they're looking to try and offload payroll to sign something or somebody else or something bigger. But I don't see anybody out there who has the same pedigree that Paul Goldschmidt has and would handle himself in the way that Goldie would. I really do think that was a pretty big mistake by the Diamondbacks.
Especially when you add to that, the chances are they aren't going to get A.J. Pollock back this year either. I know the Cincinnati Reds have been looking at him. A couple other teams are interested in A.J. Pollock. So you're losing – you're potentially going to lose A.J. Pollock and Patrick Corbin and Paul Goldschmidt all in the same offseason. And that leaves you with one young possible future superstar in Jake Lamb, and then nothing.
Yeah, and it's one of those, Pollock is rumored to be, interested by maybe the Reds are interested in him. And I misspoke earlier saying that the Gene Segura deal wasn't done. It is done. The Gene Segura deal is finished, and he is now a member of the Philadelphia Phillies, which I love that move. By the way, I really think it's great for them that they moved on from Carlos Santana, the first baseman who came over from the Indians when he was signed this past year. A guy who we know Frank Cano wanted to keep, told us as much when we talked to him last year, but didn't have nearly the year he did in 2017. Even though he played in 7 more games, had about 13 more plate appearances, but hit .229 last year, which was almost 30 points, actually exactly 30 points lower than his 2017 total. Same number of home runs, more RBI. So, again, one of those guys who the plate discipline increased, but his overall ability to get on base went down. He had about 20 fewer hits, and that cost him a pretty good chunk in the average. Again, not the worst piece for the Mariners to get back in Santana, but right now with what the Mariners are doing, also to pick up a guy like a Juan Nicasio, didn't have the best year last year. A name we've heard has shown maybe a couple of flashes of something to impress you. Overall, doesn't always look the best. His best year was a 2.61 ERA season in 76 games in 2017, and that was between multiple teams, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and St. Louis. Last year, in 46 games, had an even 6 ERA. So Mariners are offloading pieces they don't want, but again, giving up a Gene Segura to a young team like the Phillies, I think was a great move for Philadelphia. I think that is, right now, for me, one of the biggest splashes as far as not free agent signings, but moves to make. And I really like what the Phillies did there to go ahead and pick him up.
And I think both you and I thought that the Gene Segura move to the Mariners was good for the Mariners and bad for the Diamondbacks. Even though it did bring Taijuan Walker to the Diamondbacks, I think giving up the National League hits leader and a guy who's going to be a perennial Silver Slugger type hitter was a mistake that they're still kind of dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, even last year, made the All-Star team, hit .304, had a 3. Now, granted, his on base was .341, so you'd like to see maybe a little bit better there. But again, looking at a guy who struck out twice as many times as he walked, but that means he only walked 32 times and struck out 69.
Right.
I mean, that's in 144 games, 69 strikeouts. That's a month for a lot of guys.
Yeah. Well, that's a week for Stanton.
Yeah, 178 hits, 10 dingers. He's not a guy who hits a ton of long balls, but a guy with a 287 career batting average, and has hit into 17 double plays last year. So when he puts the ball in play, he finds a way to at least find a gap or do something that doesn't hurt his team as much. He is a Mookie Betts sort of kind of guy, not a huge ribby guy, 63 ribs this past year, one shy of his career high, which was 64. But
maybe he needs to start swinging an axe bat.
Maybe.
That's what Mookie Betts says his entire success is built on. So,
hey, I mean, it's if it works for him, we've seen. I've started to see him even in youth league as well as high school. I'm sure you're seeing him plenty with some of the guys that you coached last year and still see this year.
One.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you remember you saying that for your men's league. But yeah,
about $120. So, I'm seriously considering it. But I think that Gene Segura is a good fit for Philadelphia. I think that Philadelphia needs a guy like him who can get on base, needs a guy like him who can hit the ball. And when you're losing a big piece, to be able to go ahead and make a move quickly to fill it, I think is important. And if Philadelphia is able to recapture some of that fire that they had going into the end of last year, it's going to be an interesting National League East, I think. We'll have to wait and see what the Braves do. But I think a lot of interesting things are going to happen over the next couple of weeks. We do have completely off topic. We do have a sort of interesting situation building in Oakland right now. The Oakland A's used their first-round draft pick to draft a player.
Kyler Murray. He's a quarterback.
Kyler Murray, right?
Heisman Trophy winner.
Right. He just won the Heisman Trophy, which may indicate his willingness to put himself out there for the draft. I know he's committed to Oakland, but winning the Heisman Trophy increases your draft stock quite a bit.
From my understanding,
he does want to play football.
He's already come out and said that his intention is to go pitch, and that he would not pursue the NFL. At least that was a statement that was made either through him or his agent. I think within the last week or two, or 2 or 3 weeks.
Right, but he won the Heisman Trophy today.
Right, yesterday. Right, last night. Right.
Right. So you win the Heisman Trophy, and that bumps your draft stock up to first and second round numbers. And here's the thing: in the NFL, you don't play minor league baseball for a year or two and travel a whole bunch and get paid a little bit of money. You get the money now, you get the signing bonus, you get paid quick, you play quick. And if you think you can get first round money, that's a big deal. I don't know that we're ever going to see another guy who says, you know what, I want to do both. Because I think Bo Jackson struggled. Although he played at the top of his game in both sports, I think it shortened his career on both sides.
Well, at this point, Murray already has a contract. He doesn't get the choice right now. He's already signed. Oakland granted him the opportunity, gave him permission to play this year. He's already signed a contract with the Oakland Athletics.
Right.
He is.
Right. I know he's going to play for the A's, but it'll be interesting to see what
sure, he could be a Brandon Whedon, right? Whedon tried to play minor league baseball, did it for 3 or 4 years, didn't succeed, went to Texas Tech, became a quarterback of the Browns, and the rest is crap. History.
The rest is crap.
But Scott Boras came out and said this earlier today, quote, Kyler has agreed and the A's agreed to a baseball contract that gave him permission to play college football through the end of the collegiate season. After that, he is under contract to play baseball. That is not a determination to make. It's already done. Close quote. He ended up getting a $4.66 million contract. And again, that kind of, that works out. So at some point, and even he said he'd like to do both if possible, but not sure how possible that is. And the tough thing here is that I don't think he can do both. And I'll tell you why. He's a quarterback, not a running back, not a guy who you give the ball to and he just, he knows where he has to go when he goes. That's a guy who has to spend as much time looking at hitters' tendencies and scouting reports on those guys, and then try and devote your time to multiple different defenses, different coordinators, different guys. There's way too much that could go wrong for Kyler Murray. He made his choice. He is going to do his best to make it into Major League Baseball get guaranteed money. You're right, there is no minor leagues, but there's also very little guaranteed money in the NFL, and there's a good possibility he's going to make a lot of guaranteed cash in Major League Baseball as well. So, it's a crapshoot.
The guaranteed contracts are much larger in Major League Baseball. I mean, you're never gonna see a player, at least not in any time soon. I don't think you're ever gonna see a player make get a $200 million contract in the National Football League, and definitely not one that's guaranteed.
Right. I mean, we just saw the first fully guaranteed deal, and it was to Kirk Cousins for, I think, just under 70. So, but yeah. Well, guys, there you have it. A lot of things have happened in the last couple of weeks. It's going to continue to go through. Winter meetings are currently happening now. We'll be talking Hall of Fame votes here a little bit in just a couple of weeks. It was the New Era Committee or the New Age Committee. It is going through the vote right now of their 10, which included guys like George Steinbrenner, Charlie Manuel. I know Lou Piniella was in there, Will Clark, Harold Baines, Albert Bell, couple other names to get to. Oral Hershiser was in that as well. We will discuss that in the coming weeks. And, of course, we're not that far away, man, from our team breakdowns, right? We got to start looking at what the teams are going to do, what we expect to happen. And then, thankfully, we are less than 3 months away from spring training beginning. It will begin, I believe, at the tail end of February. That is amazing. And, of course, we all know that in 4 months, the beginning of the season should be a national holiday. That's something for you and I to work on if we ever decide to run for Congress. If we do run for Congress, you and I will have to run on the baseball should be a national opening day, should be a national holiday ticket. And I think we could knock it out of the park on that one.
Yeah, I think so. I think running on that ticket is what's really going to – I think we could probably take it all the way to the United States presidency, to be honest.
That's right. I mean, it's America's pastime.
I would have to be president, though. I'm not a good second fiddle.
Okay. We'll discuss this later. By the way, your contract is going to be up here pretty soon. I'm not sure if we're going to
contract.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I feel like contract indicates I should be getting paid or something.
Oh, you haven't been? Oh, sorry. Check was in the mail. I wonder why you hadn't cashed it by now.
Damn USPS.
That's right. Hey, you guys ever want to sponsor Out of Left Field? We're always always willing to take that. But again, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Even now, like we've said, in the middle of football season, you guys are still putting us in the top 5 every week of the Grueling Truth Network, most listened to podcasts. We couldn't do it without you guys. Again, all the feedback you guys give us on social media, of course, listening to the podcast. We do plan that is our goal, is to try and be a little bit more active on social media. It gets difficult sometimes. Of course, you have exams really bearing down on you rapidly.
No, I'm done.
Okay, already?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, semester ended yesterday.
Nice.
Done.
Which meant that that's why I didn't talk to you last night.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was writing from about 11 o'clock in the morning to about 11:45 last night.
Oh, that wasn't the reason I expected, so never mind. That's an off-air discussion of why I thought maybe I wasn't talking to you.
Right. Yeah. I wish.
Yeah. Well, guys, again, thanks so much for hanging out with us. We hope to have, of course, we should have some really good content coming for you in the next month. I'll be back out at the Diamond Resorts Invitational Tournament in Orlando. Looking forward to talking to a bunch of guys there, even some bigger names that are going to be present at that tournament. One wide receiver in particular I'm really looking forward to having a chance to speak with. That would be the Hall of Famer Jerry Rice. Chris, if you don't know who Jerry Rice is, played for the Niners for a while back in the day, back in the 90s.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was pretty decent.
That's interesting. I'm glad you informed me. I had never known that the greatest receiver of all time played for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, a team that I believe that you're somewhat familiar with and have a bit of a kinship towards.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I've only been a fan since 1986. So there's
okay.
That.
Yeah, so he was just kind of coming onto the scene when you were about that time.
Yeah, just coming on the scene. Got it.
So, yeah, guys. So we'll look forward to that. Hopefully, Chris and I are going to be out there doing a couple of things together. If we can go ahead and get him out to Florida. So we'll keep you updated on that. And, of course, plenty of good stuff to come in the weeks ahead. Keep up with us on our social media pages at OO Left Field on Twitter, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook. Thank you guys so much for continuing to like the post. Before we go, and I know we're about a week or so late on this, but I think we'd be remiss to not say this, and this is not a show. We have really kind of gotten away from baseball once, right? And that was with our buddy Ed Inverk. Still our most listened to show in the history of the podcast. Over 10,000 listens and still continues to grow. It's pinned on our Twitter page at OO Left Field. The 41st president of the United States, George Herbert Walker Bush, passed away. I believe it was a week and a half ago or so. Finished lying in state in the Capitol and was transported by train to College Station, Texas, where he was laid to rest on, I believe, the A&M campus. This is not about us going politics. Chris and I had different views. I'm sure different than some of you guys out there, which is fine. He and I differ, and I will say one thing very proudly that we do is we have always really been able to sit and communicate and talk and voice questions, voice differences of opinion, see things in different ways, and somehow find common middle ground on a lot of things, and find areas where we just disagree. That's it's okay.
I think people have forgotten that we're allowed to disagree.
It's a healthy thing. It's okay to disagree. It doesn't mean I'm intolerant of you. It just means that I see things differently. Now you, I might be intolerant of, but that's a different story.
I'm definitely intolerant of you.
But again, I mean, as former service members, us both, and as he was a commander-in-chief, never was our commander-in-chief. His son was. But at the end, if you saw the picture on our Facebook page, it was really, really cool. And I'll just go over the story really brief. It's a picture of him standing on a ball field wearing a Yale jersey. He was the captain of the Yale baseball team. Took the team to the first two College World Series, series, if you will, that were ever, when the College World Series was actually put into place. He was presented with a copy of the manuscript of Babe Ruth's, I think, autobiography. And it was presented as a gift to Yale University. And a really, really, just a really neat, of course, Ruth, as I look closely, he's still holding the cigar in the picture. but just a really kind of neat moment in history there. And a guy who obviously loved the game of baseball. His son owned the Texas Rangers, loved the game of baseball. So, again, we're not preaching politics, but we take a moment as two military service members to salute the commander-in-chief and again, offer our condolences and thoughts to his family. Of course, regardless of your personal feelings about him as a president, losing a loved one is never easy. And for a lot of people in that family, they lost, an uncle, a grandfather, a great-grandfather, and a father. So, again, our thoughts to that family as well as they deal with, still the difficulty of letting their dad go after 94 really extraordinary years. I mean, I don't plan to be skydiving at 90.
No, I don't plan to be skydiving at 36. So,
nope. There was a reason there were no wings. Never the wings on the chest. Nope.
As long as that plane still works, I think I'm going to stay in it.
Yeah. So, from all of us here, we offer our condolences and our thoughts to the family. Again, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it all the time. Look forward to talking to you guys next week. Be sure to hang out with us. Check us out on social media. We'll see you back here next week on Out of Left Field.